Hey guys, this is Dr. April Lynch coming to you again from Bluegrass Veterinary Hospital here in Gallatin, Tennessee. Part 3 of our 5-part series on the healthy habits of the diligent pet owner. Today we're going to talk about feet and nails, or as I like to say, the manis and the petties. So on our pets, okay, they each have 4 feet and those nails are going to grow really quickly. And even if your pet walks on the pavement a lot, which really does help to kind of file down the nails and keep them a little shorter and more manageable, you're still going to need to have some regular nail trims, especially for cats or animals who don't get a lot of exercise or who aren't on the pavement a lot. And sometimes it's every 2 weeks, which is a lot. So if you can do some of this at home, if you're comfortable and your pet allows you to, it's so much easier, less stressful, less time consuming, and less expensive than coming into the vet or the groomer on a regular basis. But first, you have to get your pet used to having their feet handled, which is really the key and is very important, not just for the care of the nails, but for so many other reasons. Many pets hate to have their feet touched, and then it becomes a battle. And when they come in and they have a nail problem or they need a nail trim or there's something we have to do to their feet, it becomes stress and fear or maybe even sedation, which is a situation that we would like to avoid. There's so many benefits to regular nail care for your pets. And some of these you may not have even thought about before, such as they have better traction, better balance, and mobility. So senior pets who may have some issues with arthritis or poor mobility are very prone to slipping and falling on surfaces in your home. However, if those nails are shorter and kept closer to the foot pad, they have a lot better traction and they're less likely to slip and fall and maybe even injure themselves. It also can reduce self-harm. So a lot of pets, when they're itchy or they have some sort of skin issue, they'll spend a lot of time scratching. And if the nails are too long, they can actually damage or even cause like what we call a hot spot or a raw area of their skin. It can reduce damage to their housemates. Even just playful behavior can sometimes result in a scratch on the surface of the eye or another part of the body. And also injury to the pet owner. When you're having to restrain your pet or even when your pet is playing with you, they can sometimes cut or injure us with their long nails. And certainly the furniture. The furniture is also a victim of the long nails, especially if you have cats. Which scratching posts are a great idea. A lot of cats like to sharpen those nails and they want something to scratch on. I will say that most owners have told me that the thing that the cat prefers to scratch on the most is the most expensive piece of furniture. So I make no guarantees, but the scratching post is a great option for kitties. And it also could save your hardwood floors because those long nails can really do a lot of damage to your hardwood floor, and that's something that no one wants to deal with. You may not realize this because hopefully you haven't had to deal with this scenario, but when a toenail is torn at the quick, as we call it, or the cuticle, there are so many small vessels in that area, and as the animal gets excited and nervous because it's painful when they tear their toenail, suddenly you look around and there's blood everywhere. So the toenails can bleed a lot, and that's something that if you've not seen it before, a lot of pet owners are very surprised by, and they are alarmed when they call us and there's a torn toenail. They're just convinced that their animal is going to bleed to death. And it does seem that way. However, that's not the case, but they do bleed a lot because of the vascular supply to the feet. It's important to be prepared for that situation by having something on hand like styptic powder that helps form a clot or prevent them from continuing to bleed when this happens. It's something that men often use for shaving. Also, if the nails are kept short and groomed properly, they're not as likely to tear. If you have those really long, excessively long nails, those are the ones that are going to get caught in something and then they rip at the base, and it's extremely painful for the pet as well. The frequency with which your particular pet will need a nail trim is entirely based upon how quickly their nails grow, how much exercise they get, how much time they spend on the concrete. So again, it's going to be up to you to be diligent to see. If you hear a lot of that tink, tink, tink on the floor, then you know they're probably getting too long. If you start to see a very visible hook forming on the nail, that's the part that we would typically remove. And it's also important to be aware that there is blood supply and a nerve in that area. So it is very painful and will bleed a lot, again, as we talked about, if it gets torn or if you cut it too short. Most pets will need a nail trim about every 2 weeks. It's a very general rule. Some pets might be every week, other pets might be less. If you're getting your pet used to having their feet handled, then each night when you're sitting there watching TV at night, just be, rubbing those feet or whatnot, And you can be determining, oh, these nails look long, we need to get these trimmed tomorrow. Whether that's you're trimming them at home or the groomer is doing it, but you need to be checking those on a regular basis for any kind of problems, or are they too long? Is one torn? Is there an infection? Another fun fact that you might not be aware of is that we often will use a tool called the Dremel, which a lot of you may be aware of for other purposes, but we use those a lot specifically for nails. It's a particular slower powered Dremel that we use, and we use those to either after a nail trim or in place of a nail trim. It takes off those rough edges that oftentimes the owners notice when they get home after we do a nail trim. There's a lot of rough edges and they can scratch the owner even though the nails are short because they're very uneven. So a few tools that may be helpful to you doing this at home is any kind of distraction that you can do. Oh, that's not going to stick. For the pet. So this is just a little rubber toy that sticks down to a surface. You can cover this in peanut butter. Be careful to only use peanut butter that is xylitol free, or Cheese Whiz or something else that your dog might like, and while they sit there and lick that off, they're not as concerned about what you might be doing with their feet. Also, keep in mind that from the time that you get your dog, even if they're puppies, it is important to get them used to having their feet handled, because they are going to have this happen at the groomer, at the veterinarian's office, and if they see this as something perilous and that's going to cause death, then it will often lead to us having to sedate your pet for a nail trim, and no one wants to do that. Also, while you're doing a nail trim, it's important to inspect the dog's feet. Are those foot pads okay? Are there any abrasions or any sore spots, anything between the toes that could be a source of pain? So things that you will need are a good set of nail trimmers, and the size and the curve will depend upon your dog, the size of the dog, with the wee itty bitty ones going down for cats. Also, very important to have something that will cause bleeding to stop. So styptic powder, which sometimes men have on hand for shaving, and if you can't find that, this is available at most pet stores. If you can't find something similar, then we have advised owners at home to use baking powder, baking soda, different things that would have the same type of consistency, because a nail that is cut too short, if you cut the cuticle or the quick, there is a blood vessel and a nerve that runs through there, and not only will it bleed quite a bit, but it will be very painful. So for cats, and if you're lucky, for some dogs, they will have a white outer shell nail, and you can easily see the vessel and the cuticle below. But a lot of dogs, like Scout, have a black nail, and therefore it's just harder to see the area that you're trying to avoid. So what I look for is how the nail kind of forms a little bit of a hook. You're going to just want to take a little tip off of that and flatten it out. And if you're not sure where to cut, just take a little bit off at a time until you start to see how this is a hollow shell. As you get closer, it will look like a little dot that you can almost see some vessels inside. And that's where you need to stop. Good. If you happen to cut the nail too short, take a little bit of styptic powder on your finger and then hold it onto the nail bed and apply pressure, and try to keep your pet still and quiet if possible for a couple of minutes, allowing that bleeding to stop and there to be a clot formed, and allowing a clot to form. Unfortunately, a lot of pets are not as keen on having their mani-pedi treatments as Scout is here, and they do require some anxiety relieving medication. This is just an over-the-counter supplement, which is just mildly takes the edge off. Sometimes sedatives or even full anesthesia are required. Obviously not an ideal circumstance, but again, the nails do have to be trimmed from time to time. So make sure to take care of those feet and nails. Give those dogs and cats their manis and pedis that they need and that they sometimes will enjoy. So if your pet hates to have their nails trimmed and they're already, an adult, it's kind of hard to undo that. However, you can help promote a more positive, rewarding sensation for nail trims and for future visits just by doing very subtle and easy things at home. Again, like I said, just sitting there at night when you're watching TV and your pet may be sitting next to you or on top of your lap on the sofa. Just massage those feet, touch the tops of the feet, just kind of grab the toes and just do little fun things promoting a positive sensation, a rewarding sensation from you, and they know that they can trust you and they're not afraid of you. And then maybe in the future it makes them more amenable to nail trims or handling or any sort of care that you might need to give them. Anything that you can do, and the more that you can do at home, the better, of handling those feet and promoting positive sensations. They make little balms that you can rub on the bottom of their feet because they can get really rough and dry patches on the foot pads. A lot of dogs love to have that rubbed in. It feels like a little manicure. And that can really improve your pet's attitude toward having their nails trimmed in the future, so that maybe it's not as stressful and they don't struggle as much, or it becomes a 5-minute procedure instead of a 15-minute procedure. I often will tell new owners of puppies, especially the small breed of dogs, which tend to be the ones who struggle so much against their nail trims, that while they're little, get them used to having those feet handled, because that's when they're very formative and you can really make an impression upon them before they kind of get set in their ways. And when they're puppies, if you really get them used to having their feet handled, they're a lot less likely to see that as a fearful, stress-inducing situation. Again, this is Dr. April Lynch coming to you from Bluegrass Veterinary Hospital in Gallatin, Tennessee. I hope this information has been helpful. Be sure to like and subscribe, and until next time, we'll catch y'all later.